Welcome to our second CalcCast. Tonight we have a special guest that I'm excited to introduce to you here in a few minutes. But before we do that, Tony and I would like to remind you of who we are and what we're doing here and why we're doing it. So my name is Brian Passwater. I'm a calculus teacher from Lebanon, Indiana, a longtime AP calculus teacher and 5-year reader for the AP exam. And always wanting to talk more about math, more about teaching, more about the reading and the scoring and the questions. I just love talking all things nerdy about math, and then also just hearing about teachers and what they're doing outside of just their calculus classes. So, learning more about the people that we see every day outside of just the teaching and the grading. So we kind of created this podcast in order to give teachers an inside look on some of the things from the reading, to hear from some of the people that are making decisions and leading some of these trainings, but also finding out more about them. So we're pretty excited to bring the second one to you. If you are trying to get a hold of the first one, our first guest was Mark Corrali, and Tony will give you some more information here in a second about how to access these, the archived CalcCast, and how to access them moving forward. Tony?
Yes, if you're new to the podcast, my name is Tony Record. I'm a teacher in Avon, Indiana, just west of Indianapolis, with 25 years experience in the classroom, a reader and a consultant and a T-Cubed instructor as well. And like Brian, I enjoy talking calculus and all things calculus. And I think, what we've started here is, it seems to, as met with most of you pretty favorable. We really appreciate a lot of the comments and the suggestions. We do listen to them. We do take them into consideration. Probably the best way that you can leave those comments is continue to do so either on the Facebook page, if you're a member of the Facebook group, the AP Calculus ABBC Facebook group. If you're not, you should certainly check that out. You can always leave comments in our YouTube channel section. You could even leave comments on my Twitter page at AP Calc Teacher. It's APCALCTCHR. And we'll definitely keep those in consideration. And we're going to look to expand our offerings and try to give you other platforms by which you can either listen to and or watch or both of our casts, particularly with iTunes. We may even look into going into Twitch video on demand. We can do a lot of different platforms to reach whatever your viewing or listening pleasures may be. Looking ahead to some of the future CalcCasts, we are looking to, Brian and I are going to be heading to Kansas City in a few days for the annual AP reading, and we're very excited about a broadcast that we're going to take part in from the beautiful city of Kansas City.
Excellent. Yeah, so we don't have an announced guest yet for Kansas City, but we're working on a few things. So in a couple of weeks, we'll have our next installment with at least one, but hopefully a couple of exciting guests that will be at the reading, and we can give you some updates about how the reading's going, how the scoring's been going so far, things that have come up, and just some general anecdotes from the scoring. So we're excited to bring that to you in a few weeks. But first, and foremost, we're super excited about our guest tonight. Our guest tonight is a longtime AP Calculus teacher. She's well known on the Teachers Pay Teacher community for her circuits, and she's a 10-time question leader at the AP reading. And our first guest tonight is none other than the famous Virge Cornelius. Hey, welcome to our second podcast. Backed by popular demand. This is Brian Passwater, calculus teacher from Lebanon, Indiana. And I'm here with my co-host, Tony Record.
Hey everybody, Tony Record from Avon High School in Avon, Indiana.
And we are super excited for a couple of reasons. One, it's almost the end of the school year. And two, we have the great Virge Cornelius with us. And before we jump to Virge, I have to give a shout out. I have an entire group of my own AP students here today. They're kind of waving in the background. Say hi, everybody. They're excited for grading. They're excited for July 6th. If you're watching this and you're a calc teacher, this is what we're doing this for. This is who we're working for every day, and so we're excited to have them make a quick appearance. So I'll say goodbye to them. Bye, Brian. And we will jump to our awesome guest today, Virge, and it looks like you got some Shrek ears on today, Virge. Is that right?
They're not Shrek ears. Although you are not the first person to mistake them for Shrek ears.
except for I mistake them on purpose. I just was trying to see if I could get a rise out of it.
Actually, you know what? I think they're on wrong. No, they're on right.
Oh, they're on right. Okay.
Virge, I'm really excited. And before we begin, it's such a perfect weekend to have you on because, as everyone knows, Solo just released in theaters last night. And so I have dressed up for the occasion to celebrate all things Star Wars. Being the big Star Wars fan that I am, did I do something wrong, you guys? I've seen some funny looks on your faces.
No, I'm excited. It's good. Keep going.
My daughter.
You look like you have Star Trek on. No,
oh, my daughter, I got the wrong movie.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. We can edit that out later. My bad.
Well, all joking aside, Virge, so you said that you were currently on your way to Kansas City from Oxford, Mississippi, and I'm hoping you can tell us, because for those of us who are readers, we will travel on June 1st, and then June 2nd is the beginning of our actual grading time. But tell us about what you're going to be doing there as a question leader. When do you arrive? What are you doing in those days beforehand? How nerve-wracking is it? What does that process look like?
So there's about 20 or 30 people who get there on Sunday night. That's tomorrow night. And we don't have any work to do tomorrow night, except any work we want to do that we haven't already done on our questions. And then on Monday, we have a big roundtable discussion. It's really just a square table put together where pretty much we go through all of the operational questions one by one and really flesh out any issues as we see them. And it's a little bit nerve-wracking as a new QL to go through this process because you feel a little bit like people are jumping on you. But as an experienced QL, I'm like, I need people to give me information because I need to start digesting what's the best way to explain this to the readers, how we're going to allocate the points. Then the second day of the pre-reading, our team members come in and we basically have 2 full days with them where we are really going through hundreds of samples and trying to really flesh out all the points. We get visited by the ELs and that's the exam leaders and the chief reader and some other folks, and they really help us to solidify our thought processes. On the 4th and 5th day, all the table leaders are there, and we have briefings for them. And those are very challenging briefings because as a QL, you present something that is about 85% ready, and so there's still holes in it. And not only that, the TLs get to ask you questions, which the readers do not get to ask you. So as a new QL, which I'm not, I've been doing this for like 10 years, but as a new QL, it is very nerve-wracking because you feel like somebody's just going to skewer you. But as an experienced QL, I know I want them to do that because I want to make sure I understand exactly the philosophy of how we're allocating the points. Mm-hmm. So then that's pretty much it. There's other things you have to do, like get your samples together so they can be photocopied and get notes together and things like that. But yeah.
Now, how many samples, I saw you on Facebook the other day, you had several samples that the College Board had sent you specifically. Tell us about those and the purpose of what you're doing with those.
Samples score pretty much, I've already gone through. Can you guys hear me? Because it said the internet connection's unstable. It's okay.
I can hear you now.
Okay. So I have 62 samples that came to me as basically PDFs electronically, and I printed them out. And I went through and I scored them all once already based on the scoring guideline that I have. And those are selected from schools that historically, I mean, they could be actually one of your schools. They have a lot of AP students. I only have about 20 kids every year, but some schools test 300 kids and the kids do very well and the kids write a lot of stuff. And so they're good ones for you to look at first, but then we'll see even more when we get on site that are reserved and not in folders yet. So we don't have to keep the books in order. And we just open them up and start looking for stuff like, look at part D, look at part D, look at part D. Because we want to try and figure out like, where's the line? This gets a point, this doesn't get the point, that kind of thing.
So when you get the your question assigned to you, then the scoring rubric has already been made. Is that correct for the points? So we don't get to blame you for that.
No. But you know, it makes sense when they write the questions, they also write the points. So everything's together and they know what's on the multiple choice and we don't know that. So they're really giving those points for a reason. I just have to figure out in my mind what's the easiest, I don't want to say easiest, that's the wrong word, but what's the most consistent way to explain that to the readership. I don't know if either of you guys have been in my briefings before.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have you been in one of my briefings before?
Yeah.
It's an unforgettable experience.
Okay, well, I'm not talking about wielding of the lightsaber necessarily, but I'm talking about like trying to be very clear. You know what I mean? And so even though it says like 1 point integral, 1 point answer, I really like to know in my head, what does that really mean?
Yeah.
Integral point, that's really entering the question. That's understanding the part of the calculus that they need to get the answer, you know? And then the answer has to be our answer, you know? Anyway, there's a lot of that kind of stuff that you have to think about as a QL.
And you're doing question ABVC1 this year, is that correct?
Right, escalator.
So, now that's a pretty big audience that you're going to be dealing with. How are you feeling about that?
It's probably, Mark is much better with recalling all the trivia, but it's probably my 5th or 6th time to brief on the first day. And it's fine for me, it doesn't bother me at all. You actually get a lot of attention from the ELs and the chief reader, and you get a lot of help thinking about your problem when you go earlier on in the flow. When you're on that 3rd tier and you're the 3rd problem, sometimes you haven't had any rulings made on your question until like, it just seems like you're waiting forever for them to give you a ruling on something. Yeah. And Mark's going to be in that situation this year, I think, but I'm not sure. I honestly haven't looked at the flow.
And who's helping you out this year on your team?
So I have Dwight. Do you guys know who Dwight Pierre is? Mm-hmm. And then I also have Ellen. And so I haven't worked with either of them before. And I've never actually worked. Each year I always get new people and new people get me. And that's really, really fun because you get to know somebody much more than just hanging out after hours or whatever. So it's fun.
Yeah. And of
course, I know Dwight really, really well. And I know Ellen a little bit.
And ABBC1, most of us know that's watching this, it's to administer the exams, is the escalator problem. And I'm sure that's going to be full of its ups and downs regardless. So
you writing my jokes for me? Oh my goodness.
He's been waiting to say that for at least a week, I guarantee it.
But it's all I got. It's
yeah, but you know, it's got to be in the convention center, right? Somebody was watching the escalators before break, before lunch, and it's pretty much, you know, 300 minutes. That's about how long? It's 300 seconds. Yeah. So that's 5 minutes. So that's about right. Like that's how long it takes everybody to get down and that kind of stuff. So
absolutely. So on our last podcast, you know, Mark and Tony and I were making some predictions about what the questions were going to be. I'm pretty sure Mark owes me a dinner because I did predict that there would be a piecewise function on the FRQs. So what I would like.
You spent a long time talking about area volume on the FRQs, and
that was Mark. That was Mark. That's why I think he owes me 2 dinners, one for being wrong and one for me being right. But this is, and maybe there might have been area volume on some of the other exams. We won't know, I guess. Maybe the international we'll find out in the fall. But so here's my question.
On the multiple choice. I mean, it's such a key concept. It has to be on the multiple choice.
Oh yeah. Yeah. What do you so you've seen your samples, you've seen the question. What's your prediction on the AB and BC average score on that problem? Where do you see it falling?
Higher than the potato.
I hope so.
I'd say it's probably in the 3s. I mean, you know, BC might be in the low 4, you know, like a 4.1 or something like that. A lot of kids are getting, well, the ones I saw anyway, a lot of kids are getting like 4 and 5 points.
Yeah.
What's happening is part D is just killing them. They just don't even know how to begin there. And to tell you the truth, I didn't know how to begin either. There's a lot to digest in that problem. And it's a little bit nerve-wracking. Like on the potato problem, you don't have your calculator.
Yeah.
So you feel like, well, I'll come back to this later after I do other stuff. But on this one, you only had your calculator for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So when I take the questions myself, and I'm sure you guys do this too, I don't really know what my question is yet necessarily. I'll sit down and I'll do all my questions, and I try and do it in a pressure situation. I'm like, God, what am I doing? I'm totally doing this wrong. My calculator's frozen. So yeah, they're not doing part D well at all. And I know why. I messed it up too when I was first looking at it.
I think I want to take this last 30-second clip that you just said and play it for my kids next year, just to let them know, you know, they get so stressed out to say, you know, even the question leader for this problem, you know, has the same struggle sometimes, you know, that
well,
you don't.
Because I intentionally put myself in that position, and I think it's even better for teachers to see it.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I mean, I think we need to put ourselves in that situation. We don't know everything, you know?
Yeah. Now, have you had a chance to obviously you probably did at first, but have you had much of a chance to look through the other 5 A/B questions?
Like the kids sample? Like
No, just the actual FRQs themselves to work out all 6.
Oh, absolutely. I did them all. I only teach AB students. We only offer AB at my high school, but I did them all. I did them all within like less than an hour. I mean, I always force myself to do that. And I got most of everything right, you know.
So what's your favorite so far of the 6? Is there any of them that really stood out to you that you thought were interesting or peculiar?
Well, and the thing is too, is that like, when I look at a question, a lot of times I think to myself, that's a great teaching question. I cannot wait to use that next year. Let me think about the actual questions themselves. I'm looking through them right now. I mean, the escalator problem's good, but we've had rate in, rate out before. You know, it's pretty the same. I mean, I thought it was fun on this one. Am I allowed to do this? Yeah, I'm allowed to do this.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, usually when we see piecewise graphs, they're piecewise linear, so that was kind of fun, right? And then when you have to find that area, you actually had to anti-differentiate.
Yeah.
There was a lot going on in that problem. I mean, I don't have favorites, to be honest with you. You know, the tabular one's pretty normal, but part D in the tabular?
Oh, yeah, the related rate.
Yeah, but I kept plugging in the wrong thing for X at first. I was like, what the heck? These numbers are gigantic.
Plugging in 50 instead of 1, right?
Right. But I mean, I had enough time to fix it, but still I was like, this is bizarre. What is happening here? Of course, this is lovely. I mean, I love these kind of problems.
Actually, I was going to bring something up about that question on that last part, the L'Hopital's rule problem. That's AB5, right?
Yes.
So here's my question. On that last part D, they wanted to use L'Hopital's rule, and I'm wondering if they grade it strictly, I think hardly anybody is going to get the points, because we spent so much time talking about taking the limit of the numerator and denominator separately. The problem is you can't just say the limit of g of x is 0, because it never tells you that. It tells you that the g of pi over 2 is 0, the point, but it never says the limit is 0. And so if the kids technically don't mention that g is differentiable according to the problem and therefore continuous, there's no way of knowing.
Yeah, if they don't state the conditions of L'Hopital's rule, you know, like, now, I don't know, when we're in those meetings, they might be different, but, so they might be out of all points in D. They might get 1 point in D if they're, you know, in the spirit of L'Hopital's rule. I'm not sure. They're trying to really crack down on that kind of stuff, though. So I bet they're going to be strict on it personally, but we'll see.
And I think they'll be certainly strict on the L'Hopital's rule conditions. My only question would be, in the given statement, they said that I think g of pi over 2 was the point they gave equals 0. And, you know, L'Hopital's rule says the limit of g of x has to approach 0. but technically in the information, they only said that the point equaled 0. And so
Mhm.
I'm wondering if they're going to have to say that since G is continuous, that means the point and the limit match. Because all the
Yes, you're
solutions
gonna
that
have
I
to
saw,
do that. I think so.
yeah,
Yeah. Definitely to get a complete answer, however many points it's worth, they're going to have to be complete. And
yeah, that'll be,
if you're the question leader, it's going to be hard to find a 9.
I think it will be on that problem.
Because as a question leader, you have to find all these great samples for later for writing your reports and everything. And it's going to be hard to find a 9 there.
Sure,
But
sure.
they'll find them.
They'll be somewhere, probably from Tony's class. just take out any kid from Tony's class and you can just get a 9 right off the bat. So Virge, I want to kind of go back to your Oxford teaching now. And I know Tony has some questions about how you got there. But before we get to that, tell us about what are you teaching now at Oxford? So I know you have an AB class. What else do you teach?
I teach at Lafayette High School. So there are 2 high schools in Oxford. One's the city high school, which is Oxford High School. And then the other one is the county high school. And I teach at the county high school.
Okay.
In many places in Mississippi, there will be a city school and a county school. And they haven't merged those together at all. So I'm the department chair. I teach AB calculus and I teach 8th grade Algebra 1. We're all one campus, so the 8th graders come up for Algebra 1. I've been doing that for about 5 or 6 years now. And I teach regular Algebra 1 to a lot of kids. And I also kind of like lead up the Algebra 1. It's a state tested area in our state. So we have several people teaching it, plus all the resource teachers, the kids with the IEPs, and then we have a compensatory math teacher. So like I kind of am like the pilot of that aircraft as well, which is a lot.
Yeah.
Because our school accreditation, I mean, we get a lot of points for kids growing and scoring well. So on that, yeah.
Virge, a lot of people that are associated with the Facebook group, and of course your excellent Teacher Pay Teachers page with your wonderful circuits, they know that you teach in Oxford, Mississippi, but you've got a background where it's kind of led you to Oxford from a very, very different place. Can you talk a little bit about that, where you grew up and how you got to Oxford?
I grew up in New York City, in Manhattan. I was born in 1966. So when I was in New York City, some of my earliest memories are people demonstrating at the United Nations building, people streaking through Central Park, Time magazine coming to the house with some horrifying pictures from Vietnam. I mean, that was that late 60s, early 70s. But I grew up in the Northeast and my parents still live there actually. I went to boarding school in the Northeast. I went to college in the Northeast. I taught in the Northeast. I was a camp counselor in the Northeast. That's where I met my husband. He's from Texas. And it's not Mark. Somebody totally different. But when we got married, a few years later, we moved to Oxford because my husband did his master's at University of Mississippi. Ole Miss, by the way, just won and is playing for the SEC championship tomorrow in baseball. So
nice.
Yeah, good times.
And they have the second best Manning brother too.
Say it again.
They have the second best Manning brother down in Ole Miss.
Yeah, there's 3 brothers altogether, right? Not
yeah, Cooper. Yeah, Cooper would have been a stud if he was healthy.
I know.
That's what Peyton and his brother used to talk about a lot. So, So of all the classes that you teach, algebra and calculus, what's the one topic that you get excited to teach the most? Like, it's one lesson or one idea that every year you look forward to it, and it's just one of your favorite things to talk about with your kids.
Well, it's kind of, I mean, I like it all. It's hard to say. And like I said, I don't really have favorites, but differential equations are absolutely my favorite. And the kids stink at them. I mean, it's just a reality. And they do great when they're learning it. Oh, no. Same with factoring.
Yep.
I love teaching factoring, but kids stink at it.
How did your kids do on the potato question?
Well, I don't know because I don't look back at all that minutia, But I do know this, when they came out of it, they said, but there was no T. I'm like, oh my gosh. I thought to myself, that's the killer. And I didn't even know I was the question leader for that. And I didn't even know what the question was. And the kids know they're not supposed to talk about it, but they kept saying, there was no T. I'm like.
And it's amazing how many people in the United States blamed you for that. It's Virge's fault.
No, but I did write that. So I always have great team members, but I had Karen and Jerome last year. And you probably know both of them. But anyway, as we were talking about, like, how could we help kids and teachers be better at this? I wrote that sort and solve activity, which you've probably seen, and or maybe even you worked on it with your kids. And there's 12 questions altogether. So there's 4 differential equations where only the independent variable is showing, 4 where only the dependent variable is showing, like the potato problem, and then 4 where both are showing. Like the typical, the one that's Mark's question this year, AB6, I think it is, where both are showing. And just all the things to do with it. You don't have to necessarily solve a differential equation in order to answer the question.
Yeah.
You know, like in the potato problem, when I didn't even know it was a QL for that problem when I was solving it. But when they asked you to write an equation of the tangent line and then use it to make an estimation or whatever, I think that was part A last year.
Yeah.
I solved the differential equation first, right? Then I took the derivative. Then I knew what I did it fast, so it didn't matter, but like, what the heck?
And then you couldn't even use that when they introduced another model for part C.
Like, do an arrow.
Draw an arrow.
No. Now we got to do something.
I think my kids were disappointed this year. My kids were ready for one of those contextual, no independent variable problems like the potato or the baby. I mean, they were ready. We had done a ton of those, and they came back and they were just like, that was too easy. Like that question, they were like we were ready for the hard one, and it never showed up. And I was like, well, it'll probably show up next year.
And no logarithm either.
Major.
Yeah, exactly.
Major and taking DE, then you'll see it.
Absolutely. So, Virge, after the reading, you'll be there. Did you get to go home on the 9th, or do you have to stay any longer? Okay. So, any big summer plans? What do you do to relax before the beginning of school year?
I don't relax.
So how do you fill your time? Are you preparing? Are you doing workshops?
No. We go to New Hampshire. My husband works in New Hampshire at the same kind of summer school camp where we were both counselors back in the 80s. He has some administrative roles there, and I teach there, but I have a kid who's in band, and so we go up, we road trip up with the family. We're in New Hampshire, then I have to fly back with my kid for band camp, because that is like
life.
Sacred, yes. Then we fly back, and then we drive back down. So I actually missed the first few days of school because my administration is so awesome. And I also miss the teacher meetings.
I think miss might be a strong word there. You don't get to attend them, but I don't think you're missing them in any way.
That is definitely true. Although they've cut us down, like we usually used to do 4, and now we have like 2 in the summer that we do that are kind of self-scheduled, and then 2 before school starts. Yeah. And of course, I have like 12 before school starts because of the AP reading, so I don't have to do much in the summer. But
yeah. So we have as part of the segment where I call it Fast 5. So I'm going to ask you 5 quick questions and go with your first instinct. So these aren't going to be thought-provoking, but just whatever kind of comes to mind. Although it may be difficult because it's about your favorites. So you don't have any favorites necessarily. So if you have a couple of answers or things that you like, you can answer those as well.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. Favorite food?
Japanese.
Nice. Favorite Star Wars character?
Probably Han Solo.
I would say
only because you have to understand, I was a young girl. I mean, Harrison Ford was so attractive, but I think I would like Yoda to be my favorite character. He just isn't in the movies enough,
Yeah. And we were talking before we started recording that you haven't seen the Solo movie yet. So if anybody's watching this, do not come up to Virge at the beginning of the reading and give her any spoilers about the movie until she's seen it.
Although I am fairly certain Han Solo and Chewbacca survive.
I was going to say, no one can tell me that he dies because I won't believe him.
Now, all bets are off on any other movie, but I'm pretty sure that that's a safe bet for this one.
What's your favorite of all the Star Wars movies so far?
Oh, 4. Well, which is really Star Wars, 1977.
Yeah, the first one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Favorite number?
Wait. Can I just elaborate on that for a second?
Please.
The episode 7, the one that we waited so long for, that was just a joyful experience, even though Han Solo was skewered. But, I mean, that was so great for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Favorite number?
Favorite number? E,
yep.
Definitely.
And then last one, and this would be hard, I know, but maybe it's a more recent one. Favorite teaching moment?
I think my favorite teaching moments are after my kids have graduated. I teach in a place where my students their families are very rooted in the community. So even if I have a student who's working in China, or a student who's working on an oil rig, or a student who's working in Boston, or a student who's working at Apple, and or a student who's working in a doctor's office, like it's those 5 and 10 years out that those are my favorite teaching moments, because seeing those kids again, whether they come back and visit me, or whether I see them at a ball game, or whether I see them in the community, that's my favorite by far.
Yeah. Okay, that's perfect. And then a follow-up question. This is not a fast 5 question, but a quick follow-up. You kind of brought it up. You made me think about this. I think it's important that teachers that listen to this, whether they're first-year teachers, they've been teaching for 20 years, to realize, I think you kind of set the tone earlier by talking about how you took the test under the same conditions your students did, and you were so open about the same things that we all feel, which is we make mistakes, we struggle on questions, we do things we shouldn't do. And I think it's so important that teachers hear that, to know that, we don't have to be perfect. So what's one thing that you hope in the next 3 to 5 years that as a teacher that you get better at?
Like a personal goal?
Yeah, just, what are you currently working on, or what are you hoping? Every year as teachers, we always, try to tweak little things here and there. It could be a broad teaching pedagogy, or just relationship, or a topic.
Well, I mean, one thing is that on the last day of school, one of the IT people, who's a former student of mine, who's actually working in IT at our school district now, rolled in a computer cart, like a Chromebook cart, to my classroom, and it's orange and gray. It looks like BB-8, except it's not round. And it has 33 Chromebooks in it, and it's our second math computer cart. Now, I had my AP kids on Khan Academy some this year, never in class, but because they all have access anyway, they were on Khan Academy a little bit. But definitely one of my goals is we are not one-to-one, but to get some of my Algebra 1 kids on Khan Academy and doing some more stuff online, because we do have a little bit more resources now, and their test is online. So anyway, it's just horrible that they have to take their state test in algebra online, and yet their interface on a day-to-day basis is paper and pencil. But that's a whole other story.
It's funny you say that.
That's
because
definitely a goal for me for the next couple of years, to kind of incorporate that without throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I'm not going to get rid of all what I do, because it's already kind of refined, but to incorporate more technology that way.
Outside of the convention center, what's one thing that you look forward to in Kansas City each year? So not the stuff that happens in not the reading itself, but something else, a friend that you look forward to seeing every year, a restaurant.
All of them. It's so great. It's like, I don't know if you read my blog post about how it's like calculus camp, and it's all like the same stuff every year. You pick up right where you left off, your same friends. I love going out to dinner, paying only for myself because I don't have my kids and husband there. I don't know. I love everything about it. It's a lot of work, but since I go first, you know, I don't have a lot of work at night. Once that first day is over, I don't have any work at night. So
there's been some chatter in the Facebook group today about the Flying Saucer restaurant, you know, and working there last year. So the rumor is that you're going to try to get your name up there this year, that you're going to drink every beer, I think, after the first night. Is that right?
You know how old I am?
31.
I am a prime age, but that's not it. No.
And no, her students will not be watching this podcast.
No, I don't care. They can watch it. No, you know, I'm not really like, I usually go towards the Sheraton. I don't usually stay in the Power and Light. I mean, I've been there before to the Flying Saucer and stuff, but have you been to Lulu's?
Have you been there, Tony?
That doesn't sound familiar.
Lulu's Tide.
Okay. Is it on the walk back from the convention center?
Kind of. It's kind of near where Lydia's is, but it's not like in that Jack Stack area. It's kind of behind that.
Yeah.
You know, that's probably where I'll go tomorrow night, maybe. So if I can get people to go with me.
I think Tony's been drooling for some Lydia's. That's the Italian place, isn't it? There. Yeah, we were just talking about that.
TL dinner there.
It's fantastic. You know, we were there either last year or 2 years ago, and Lydia was there and was like taking pictures and everything, and some kind of promo. Yeah, she must have been there for some kind of advertising or something. But yeah, that's a great place to go. You mentioned your blog. What's that, Tony?
Well, it's hard sometimes to come to grips when you go to Kansas City and your favorite restaurant's an Italian restaurant and you bypass all that barbecue. But
well, we don't bypass it. There's plenty of nice.
I live in Oxford, Mississippi. We have plenty of barbecue, great barbecue at gas stations. I do not need barbecue in Kansas City. And I realize it's beef mostly in Kansas City, but still.
Jack Stack burnt ends. I'm going to put a plug in now.
They are very, very good. I agree.
You mentioned your blog. Tell our viewers who aren't sure how they can find your blog, and then also tell us a little bit about your Teachers Pay Teacher and what's on there and how they can find your stuff on there.
So my blog is just a WordPress site. It's Virge, VIRGE, Cornelius, CORNELIUS.com. And it's really just, when I started writing the blog, I think I started in 2014, I had actually been told by a couple of different people, like, you should really start writing some of this stuff down. And so I did. What you see on the blog is the polished stuff. I easily have 30 of them that are not polished. Anyway, so it's math, teaching, and teaching math. So sometimes it's not necessarily about calculus, you know, sometimes it's just regular classroom management stuff. And I think that for me anyway, as a writer, I feel like I learn a lot as I write. And I know that that's true for anybody who writes. Anyway, it's just fun to try and understand what it is, you know, by really, and that's why English teachers make their kids write papers, you know. I could not grade all that stuff though. Yikes.
And as a reader of your blog, I'll definitely put a pitch in for it, because it's very open too. You know, you share a lot of your experiences, sometimes funny, sometimes serious. But I think for any teacher to read it, it shows you just the thoughts of a teacher and the things that go on in your classroom. And I think as we read it, it's like, okay, I'm not the only one that has students that say some of these surprising, funny, scary things sometimes. So I think it's good to have that comfort that others are in the same boat.
Yeah, thank you.
No, it's fantastic.
And I'm honestly not writing it for that reason, although that's definitely a you know, side effect or whatever. But I really write it for me, like, you know. So, but that you guys like it is awesome.
That's great. And then in addition to that, your other contributions in the community, you know, with your, you know, you're known as the queen of the circuit, and all of the ones that you've written and the ones that you've collaborated with others, I know that they've helped, you know, both, you know, Brian and myself and dozens and dozens and dozens of other teachers. And I know we're all appreciative for that.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. And it was definitely a labor of love. And there were a lot of people like Dennis Donovan and Mark Corrali and Nicole Lang and Jean Michael and lots of other folks, Erica Arrington, like just tons of folks, Ginger Riddle, who say, give me your draft, I'll check it for you. And they've been so, it's been such an, you know, I don't know if your school makes you do PLCs.
Mm-hmm.
Do you, yes?
Oh, yes.
There's a problem with that statement. Your school makes you do PLCs. So it forces a professional learning community, which I get it. Like, I know the administrators want us to like learn from each other and stuff, but the AP calculus reading and writing circuits and having my colleagues check them and give me feedback, and like that has been the most professional growth ever. You know, it's been
Sure.
really great. So, but
That's
yeah,
great.
they can find that stuff very easily on Teachers Pay Teachers. So.
What and Virge, we promised you that we would keep this shorter than Mark's, and so we're gonna wrap this up to respect your time, and so you can go and hang out with your friends right now. But before we let you go, I'll put you on the spot. For those people who have heard of you, who know of you, but maybe don't know a lot about you, is there any one thing that you would want someone who doesn't know you very well to know about you? Like, what's important to you? What are your passions? You know, who is Virge Cornelius?
Well, I think that it's fair to say that I'm still evolving, you know. I have, in the last year or so, like realized, admitted to the fact that I'm a creative person. I thought that a math person and a creative person couldn't be the same thing. And actually, there's nothing further from the truth. When you are in the middle of a crazy math problem, the person who gets themselves out of it is a creative person. They're able to open up that part of their head. They're not forced to one particular method or procedure, you know? So I think I'm a pretty creative person, even though I never made it to Nashville. Oh, I have a song. I have a song for the closing night.
Oh, that'll be a good plug for the closing night. Any hints on the song?
Sure. So do you know the musical Wicked?
Oh, yeah.
You're familiar.
Okay, so you know the song Popular?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I see someone less mathematical than I, and let's face it, who isn't less mathematical than I? My mathy heart tends to start to bleed. Do you know the song? And when someone needs a
Oh, yeah.
math tutor, I simply have to rush over. I know exactly what they need. And even in your case, though it's the toughest case I've yet to face, don't worry, I'm determined to succeed. Follow my lead. And yes, indeed, you will learn calculus. You're gonna learn calculus. It goes on from there. But
I
anyway,
like it.
It was halfway written
So if
last
you want to hear if anybody wants to hear the rest of that, they have to come to the closing ceremonies or watch the Facebook page afterwards.
Yes, that's right.
Wonderful.
The rest.
That's great. And I thought you were going to make some mention of a certain irrational number on your arm.
Oh, the pie tattoo?
You know, because you got long sleeves on, we're not going to go there. But yeah.
Yeah.
True math.
So is it real or is it not? That's what you're asking? Do I have a pie tattoo?
I'm mostly concerned if you have a pie tattoo, why E was your favorite number.
Yeah.
Well, that was my arm. That was my arm. And I got that tattoo in Provincetown, Massachusetts. But it was a henna tattoo.
Oh, we don't have to. We'll edit that out. We can let.
No, it's fine. I don't have a tattoo.
That's right. Right.
Now, Virge, yeah, Virge, I don't want to, I'll show
It
you
really was
mine.
my arm. Yeah.
I did get the zeta function on my arm last summer.
And
Yeah.
I've actually got Fermat's last theorem's proof on a pretty strategic part of my body, but well, it's a family show, so we're not going to go there.
Is that Virge? Thank you again for joining us. You were a wonderful guest, a wonderful person to talk to. I learned a lot about you. I learned a lot about the reading. And I'm sure that everyone, the millions of viewers that will see this across the world will certainly agree. Yeah, I keep telling I tell my wife that our first one went viral. You know, we had hundreds and hundreds of viewers. Literally, I think 200. But it's a slow viral outbreak.
You know what I'm gonna do though? I'm gonna write a blog post about this, and I'll put the link for this and the link for the inaugural one on there.
Well, just put yours on there so you can beat Mark's views. That's all you have to worry about, and then you could just let him hear about it all during the reading. How your CalcCast episode had more views than his did.
Mark and I don't need anything else to fight about. Don't add it to the file.
Well, Virge, I'll look forward to seeing you in a couple of days. Good, safe travels on your way to Kansas City. Good luck getting all of your samples, and I'll hope that you have a really crisp, clean, closed rubric with no surprises.
And I hope that you guys are in my flow. Otherwise,
I look forward to it.
The escalators.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Virge.
I will leave the Star Trek attire at home, Virge. We do appreciate you being on the show, Virge, and we appreciate everything that you do for the community.
All right. Thank you, guys. We'll talk to you soon.
You guys. Bye.
See you, Virge.
Bye, Virge.
You know, I was wondering, you know, if you could keep on, because the Force, it's got a lot of power, and it makes me feel like it makes me feel like